guys, welcome back to Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel today to spend some time with me. And guys, we're going to be talking about why summer is so difficult to catch bass a lot of times in. Out of all the seasons of the year, winter, spring, summer, and fall, personally, I think that summertime is the most difficult, challenging time of the year to catch fish, which doesn't really make sense because if you figure that a bass is a cold-blooded creature, and the warmer the water, the higher their metabolism would be, and they feed more. It's not the case, and I'll explain to you guys why and some things you can do to really increase your success in today's episode here. Also, guys, two quick housekeeping tips I wanted to run by you guys to keep the lights on here in the tackle room. Guys, you've heard me talking about this before, man, but if you are in the market to buy a new bait cast reel right now, check out this Cast King ALTI right here. Guys, this thing is freaking awesome. It's almost impossible to backlash because it's got this halo vortex braking system. And when you adjust it right, guys, you can pretty much cast it without even thumbing the spool. It's the world's first all titanium spool here, 11 ball bearings, built for stout. It's only around 200 bucks, which is very competitive. You know, I've never seen a reel for that price that you get this many features and quality with. So this will be, I'll put the Cast King link in the description of this video. If you use the promo code Randy10, you get an additional discount, and it's also in my Tackle Warehouse link too. And also, guys, real quick, while you're at it, pick up a tube of Baitpop, guys. I've been using this all spring long. I've seen a noticeable difference in my strikes I get. It's got amino acids in it. It's got real fish. Stays on the bait forever, man. I'll have this link to my Tackle Warehouse link in the description too. So appreciate you guys putting up with the plugs there. I know that a lot of people probably fast forward through it, but for all you guys that listen and buy some of this stuff, thank you for me and my family. We really appreciate that. Okay, guys, if you look at it, in my own fishing, it's like if I look at the quality of fishing and how easy it is to get bit, I think summertime, and specifically late summer and into early fall, which sort of is still the summer time frame, that's the toughest time of year to catch fish. Late summer is the toughest time of year, in my opinion, to catch them. And it doesn't make sense, like I said, because the water temperatures are maxed out. A lot of times water temperatures are in the mid 80s, even upper 80s. And you would think that, you know, it would kick the metabolism of a fish in, they'd start feeding more. And bass do feed a lot at night. The bass do feed a lot in the summertime, but they feed heavily at night. And this is the case all year long. Most of the active feeding of a bass goes on at night in the summertime. So it can be a lot easier and decent fishing during the nighttime, but if you're daytime fishing in the summertime, it can be a challenge. And there's a couple different reasons why this is that I want to talk about in today's video. Okay, here's sort of the progression why it's so tough. About around the first part of July or something, when it really the summer really starts to set in. It starts to get hot and you don't have those cool nights and the nights are warm and muggy. Most lakes across the country, a thermocline begins to form, where you have a separation, you know, in the temperature of the water, and below a thermocline, you're not going to have much oxygen. So most of the time below, guys, about probably 25 or 30 feet, I think flies in here, you're not going to have a lot of oxygen below that depth. So you don't have a lot of fish that are on the bottom in the summertime deeper than about 25 or 30 feet. What happens is once this thermocline starts to get established, this is the time of year the fishing starts to get tough. It can be pretty decent fishing in early summer like June, but once that thermocline establishes and it pushes those fish out of that deeper water, they really begin to disperse through the lake. And what happens is this dispersal takes place in a couple different ways. In June, there's a lot of fish that are schooled up, and you know, you got these big wolf packs of fish and big schools of fish. But as it gets warmer and that thermocline, you know, begins to develop, those schools of bass get smaller and smaller. They still school up a little bit, but they don't school up as in big groups. So they start to scatter out and they start to become more individualistic. So what happens is during the summertime, like in July, you got some fish that just start moving out off the bank, and they're roaming out in the middle of the lake. And this is what the scopers are catching them on. This is why the live scope has become so deadly, especially in the summertime of the year, you know, over the past 5 years, is they're able to catch those fish that just get out there in open water for no reason whatsoever, and they just live out there chasing shad. They can live in 10, 20, 30 foot, over 100 foot of water. They're just everywhere out there. So in my opinion, from what I have seen in my own fishing, is once July sets in, you've got probably 60% of the bass in the lake, even in a lake that has off-colored water, that simply are, they're just like nowhere to be found. They're roaming everywhere out in open water. And like I said, the scopers and everything, they're going to catch them out there. But for the real bass fishermen, this is when it gets super tough, because right off the bat, you've had 60% of your bass population basically disappear. I've always known they were out there. You know, I've seen them busting shad out there in the summer, and I've heard guys catching them, you know, trolling for stripers and all that type of deal. But that's one of the reasons it's so tough. There's 60% of the fish are basically uncatchable with traditional bass fishing techniques. Now the other 40% that you're fishing for, there's 20 this is just a rough estimate, and a lot of it depends on the type of lake as far as the water clarity that you're fishing and the species you have in it. But the 40% of the bass that remain, that are not roamers, open water, just rogue roaming fish out there, they're either going to be bottom-oriented fish in less than 20 foot of water, or they're going to be shallow fish, that live in shallow areas. And it's about half and half. From what I have seen, when you take the non-live scope fish out of there, you got, like I said, 20% of the bass population that are like living on points and 15 or 20 foot of water, living on bluffs and 15 or 20 foot of water. And then you got 20% of the bass population that are dirt shallow. And these are the bluegill chasers, and these are the bluegill feeders, and they're the bass that are shallow water, object oriented. And they stay like that. I don't care what the water clarity is. I don't care if you got 10 foot of water visibility or 5 inches of water visibility. 20% of the bass in the summertime of the year are going to live in less than 5 foot of water in certain areas of the lake, basically feeding on all the prey that's up there. They eat bluegills, they eat every type of perch, they eat minnows, they eat crawdads, they eat frogs, they eat snakes, they'll eat a bird if it drops in the water. They're just hunter-gatherers in that shallow water. And like I said, the other 20% are a little bit out off there. Now, here's my advice for summertime fishing. If you concentrate on those 40%, I'm not going to give you guys any tips and advice for using the cheater box. You're going to have to do that on your own. But for the 40% of the fish that are out there, here's my tips and advice. I do both. One of my favorite ways to catch them in the summertime of the year is I don't fish shallow all the time. I do fish deeper. So one of my favorite ways to catch them in the summertime is I'll take a big worm, like a Zoom Old Monster, 10-inch worm, something like that, or a football head jig, and I'll just run points, like run main lake and secondary points, and I'll target that 10 to 20 foot of water. And these points, you don't have to have any drops or structure on them. They just live out there on those points around any irregular feature or anything. But I'll run points with that big worm and that football head jig, and I can catch quite a few fish doing that. And then the other 20% of the time, I'm up shallow looking for fish shallow. And based upon where I'm fishing at, the water clarity, that can be a square bill crankbait up shallow. It can be flipping and pitching a jig or creature bait. I could be flipping and pitching a worm underneath boat docks. I'm fishing whatever shallow cover is available. I like to fish a swim jig in the summertime of the year for those bluegill feeders up really, really shallow. And then also summertime, there's always a decent topwater bite. There's usually always a good, popper or chugger bite early in the morning. And then sometimes on the clear water lakes especially, they'll bite like a whopper plopper or a walking topwater all day long for those same fish that are chasing those bluegills there. So that is basically why it's tough. The main reason it's so tough, guys, is those fish are just all over the place. And another reason they're so tough is just like what I said at the start of the video, they're feeding at night. I mean, that's when they feed. After it gets light, they're not feeding, they're inactive. And that's why you've got to generate a reaction strike to catch those other 40% of the fish. 90% of the fish that you catch in the summertime of the year during the daytime are reaction strike fish. Those aren't feeders. Those aren't ones that are hungry. The hungry fish will bite a spinnerbait, a jig and frog, a plastic worm fished at night, at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, because they're actively feeding. But you're trying to trigger a reaction strike during the daytime. Frogs, another good one, guys, is a frog. Frog is a real good bait to fish in that shallow water in the summertime. And on top of that, the fact that they are not feeding actively, another thing with that is you have oxygen levels to contend with. A lot of times in that shallow water, you don't have the best oxygen content, so that makes fish a little bit more lethargic and less aggressive. So you've got a combination of things that they're working against you, and you've also got more noise on the lake. In the summertime, you got jet skis, you got those big wake-making bastards out there, you got people fishing and playing around on the water, and those increased noise decibel levels, you tend to turn the fish off too. But anyway, it lasts about 3 months, and then, it's going to last up until the end of September. And then once September gets here, daylight hours start getting a little bit shorter, starting to get a little bit cooler at night. They start biting a little bit better in the fall, and then just the whole cycle repeats itself. So anyway, guys, hope helps you out. We'll talk later.